Welcome to Meeting Success, the podcast for the meetings, events, and entertainment industry. I'm Coach Pete Sackel, business and productivity coach and 30-year event production veteran. And I'm going back to my roots to reconnect with top leaders and entrepreneurs to uncover valuable insights on business and mindset. And no doubt, you'll hear some entertaining stories along the way from a colorful cast of characters.
Go out and make others feel important.
Every week, you will in fact be meeting success. Now, the stage is set, it's showtime. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. So, got a special guest for you today, Mr. Tony Golden. And Tony, you've probably heard before on the show. I've mentioned him before. He is our producer, our technician, and our master of everything here at C47 Digital Studios. So I thought it'd be great to have Tony on so you can kind of get to know him a little bit better. And also has an incredible story that we're going to talk about and get into some things here. But welcome, Tony.
Well, thank you, Pete, for having me. I was at first concerned because I was like, yesterday you were like, "Hey, how would you feel about being on the show?"
You didn't sound like overly excited.
I was excited, but I was like, who's gonna run the board? And I was like, but I'm over here. But like,
yeah, so we figured that out, and Tony is still running the show here.
Yeah,
so
still technically, I'm here and I'm also there. So,
yes.
Yeah, I'm good.
He's all places, but so welcome. So I know that you're a filmmaker, you're a producer. You're an actor,
yes, sir.
Which is interesting too. We were talking a little bit before we came on here about acting and playing a role and all that stuff that we want to get into a little bit. But why don't you give everybody a little bit of a background on you and how you started and all that?
Yeah. So I got into acting back when I was in middle school. I had a teacher named Lisa Cameron back at Gotham Middle School at the time. She, so funny enough, I always tell her that acting saved my life at that time because one of my best friends had recently passed away. And I was in the acting class and I was really depressed and I was thinking about switching out of acting because I was like, I don't know if I really want to be here or not. But when my friend passed away, Lisa Cameron came up to me and she was like, "Listen, I'm sorry. Like, I really hope like you stay. Like, I would love to be your teacher, love to have you stick around. And like, I just want to say I'm really sorry." And just that compassion I didn't get from really anybody at the school at that time. And I think I wanted to stay in it more or less to be near her.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think that after that, like, it ended up being something I fell in love with. And then I ended up, going into Dr. Phillips High School, the magnet program here in Orlando. And teacher Karen Regario, who I'm actually working with now to open up a new theater company here in Orlando. She taught Wayne Brady, she taught Joey Fatone, she taught all these people, Wesley Snipes, and
Tony Golden
now. But she was also very instrumental in keeping me into acting. And then she ended up motivating me to go to college for acting. I went to Boston University for acting for 4 years. And then I went on a national players tour, which was where I got to play Tom Robinson in over 40-something states and, over 100 and something performances. And again, I just remember after that, I was like, I'm tired, I'm fatigued. I want to come back home. So I went back home and then I ended up getting really excited about the idea of being a director. And I didn't know anything about film school. I knew nothing about film. And I remember, sitting there being like, okay, well, you don't know this, maybe you should go to school for it, or and I said, well, who says I would be a director? What right do I have to actually tell actors what to do and what not to do? So I ended up being I remember sitting at home one day and I watched a show called The Get Down and I'm like, I want to do this is what I want to do. And I remember applying for film school and I said, okay, I'm going to apply for NYU and I'm going to apply for USC. These are the top film schools in the country. And I was like, whichever one says no, that's just my sign to go to the other. And NYU said no, USC said yes. So I went to California and I was like, I wanted to get out of Florida at the time. And I said, okay, I'm going to USC. And went to USC for 3 years and got my master's in film and TV. And then I ended up moving back because of the pandemic. And I ended up being in Orlando ever since then.
Wow.
So now I'm here making films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. It's interesting what you say, and I've heard this before, and it's always incredible when I hear the story about like the person, your teacher at the time was the one that kind of kept you in acting, made you, got you interested in acting, and it wasn't so much about being interested in acting, like you say, it was about that person.
Yeah.
And it's such an important thing, I think, to understand the impact we have on people. So when you're doing something like that, when you're a teacher, definitely, but just anytime you're interacting with somebody, you have that potential to like motivate somebody to do something and to follow something that they maybe weren't even thinking about following.
Yeah, it's so funny. Everybody says you do it for a girl. Everybody hears the story, but really, I did it for a woman who I knew for a fact I felt so comfortable with.
Yeah.
And middle school was always really tough for me, as is for most kids, right? But I was like struck by just how compassionate someone could be.
Right.
This woman doesn't even know me. Like I was just starting the semester, and I'm like, okay, like this is who, like she doesn't know me. Why would she come and give me that comfort? And again, we talk about vulnerability a lot, you and I, but like I felt like I could just be vulnerable with her, and that was exciting.
Yeah.
And that was something I was like, okay, I want to be around this woman.
Yeah.
I want to hang out with her. We're gonna figure this out.
Right.
So.
Well, it reminds me, if you remember the episode we had with Gene Columbus, talking to Gene, and that's what kind of got him started in entertainment, was talk about about a girl. I mean, his I think it was his dance teacher at the time or something, that he said that he just wanted to be around her, so he got into dance and then entertainment, and the rest is history for him. So that's the way it works.
Which is one of my favorite episodes, by the way.
That was Gene's incredible storyteller and incredible person to talk to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, don't take this the wrong way.
No, please.
But I hope you die.
Yes. I will not take that the wrong way.
So explain that. That's something we talked about. We said, we got to make the title of the episode, I Hope You Die.
So, I hope you die. So first of all, I want whoever I'm directing this to, I Hope You Die is such an amazing expression that the Japanese culture, Japanese theater, I can't tell you exactly the truth, but they created that slogan. And they created that slogan because they said, when you take on a character, you must die so the character can live.
Right.
And since hearing that, I actually heard that from my one of my college professors back at Boston University. She said that to me, Elaine Van Hogue. She was the one who said to me, I hope you die, let the character live. And when you're playing a role, when you're playing a character, Tony doesn't exist. Anthony Golden doesn't exist. Right. That character does. You have to step out of the way so the character can take shape. Everybody's like Hamlet. Well, I've never killed anybody. How can I relate to this character? Like, I've never gone insane. You have had moments in your life where you've related to, like, I guarantee we've all done that. When we felt like we were losing our mind, or we could see the potential of us doing something so absurd, so out of character, to achieve whatever goal that was. There is something in you, but you have to let your own, this right here, your brain, your mind, your idea of who you are, die to let Hamlet live.
Yeah.
And that's what the beauty of it is. And that's why I stand by that. I say, like, whenever I play a role, it's not about Tony. Tony doesn't exist.
Right.
What Tony would do doesn't exist. And Tony's embarrassed because, well, what if my friends are going to come see the show and my family's going to come see the show? They've never seen me in this light. They've never seen me do. I'm like, but that doesn't matter. Regardless, that person doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I've never had this experience, but I can only assume it's like when you go drinking and you like, what happened last day? What happened yesterday? You black out.
I may have had that experience once or twice.
Well, you black out and you get to a point where you wake up and you're like, what happened? That's what let the character take control. Let them drive the car and let them actually like tell their story.
Yeah.
And I think that the expression just sums it up perfectly.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and you and I have had this conversation before too about playing a role. And we talk about in our professional lives, that you play a role. There's a certain, qualities or whatever you take on that's maybe a little bit differently than you normally would. And we have other, examples. I mean, even like you think about like people like, I don't know, maybe Tony Robbins, gets on stage and he becomes a motivational speaker. Ed Milet is the one that I listen to a lot, and he always says that he's very much an introvert. But when he gets up on stage, I mean, he's very like, outspoken, obviously, and very, he commands the room and all that. So it's kind of like you step into this role. So I'm thinking about like how you take what you're talking about and transfer that into like business, let's say, or providing a service or whatever. And you and I talk about this, like how you keep your authenticity in that role. And I think maybe like you said, there's things even in acting, you bring certain experiences and things to that role. So there is always kind of like a part of you, but it's almost like you let the physical die, right? Like you let the ego and all that die, and then you focus on the important part of the character, because it's really about the story in the end, right? It's the movie. You're playing a character to help tell that story.
Yeah. So, yes, like and with business, right? What we're saying, it's like, Pete, you have a product that you want everyone to have. Mm-hmm. You talk about this with me, like you said, like listen, like when we talk about speech, when we talk about events and everything, you want people to take go to Coach Pete because you want them to understand, hey, my goal in life is to make sure you're best for like selling your business and whatever you want to do. Mm-hmm. When you have something that you want to give to others, right? That's where the authenticity comes. Because I believe it's like, I know for a sec, I want everybody to have this. It's kind of like the same thing with like a phone, right? Somebody said, I want to come up with the idea of a phone. Graham Bell, like Alexander Graham Bell. And like you sit there and you talk about it, it's like, it would be so convenient for everyone to be able to talk, wherever they are, and not have to always meet in person, but can actually call on the phone and be thousands of miles away, and we can still have a conversation. The authenticity came in with the need. He's like, my need was to make sure everyone had this. Right. And now what you have to do is find a way for people to buy it from you. Right. And that's where the character comes in. That's where it's like, okay, maybe they won't buy it from the introverted Anthony Golden who sits at home, plays video games all day, doesn't want to talk to anybody, yada yada. But you have to create a character where I'm like, well, I know this product is bigger than me. So this product is bigger than me, so therefore I need to create someone that I know for a fact people will buy it from. The Wiz. Yeah. But I mean, like, come here, everybody come here. But really I'm a guy behind the curtain, pulling strings, yada yada. But I know people would come to this new persona. They would gravitate around this guy because this is someone that they're like, I need this from him. Yeah. And again, that's what I said to the people. I'm like, sometimes it's not about you. And it really isn't. It isn't about you. It's about who you need to be for them to buy what you need them to have. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's awesome. So like you're saying, like the authenticity comes in that desire that you have to help other people, to connect with other people, to really get that, whether it's a story, whatever it is, like you say, a product, a service, and all that. And it's interesting because I talk about, in my business when I'm coaching clients, and you hear a lot about the philosophy of, you got to sell yourself, right? I mean, and I agree to a point. It's like, if that means, by selling yourself, that means like coming across professionally with integrity and all those things, that, you want to present yourself in the best possible light. Yeah. But when you're providing a product, a service, whatever, to clients, you have to, if you're just selling yourself, then you are the only one that's going to be able to solve problems, right? But if you're selling though that solution, whether it's a coaching program, a movie, whatever it is that you want to get across, you have to kind of like, let some of the ego die, because it's not about you. Exactly. It's got to be bigger than that, and it's almost like you're like what you explained before too is kind of like the imposter syndrome, right? Like, who am I to direct people, tell actors what to do, and all that stuff. Who am I to coach other individuals? I mean, it's like I've made mistakes and all that in my career, but I've got to get to a point where I get out of my head, and make it more important that I help as many people as I can than just stay stuck in, however I act or conduct myself when, I'm not talking to other business owners. Yeah, and I think that's, again, you have something that's bigger than you. Right. You believe that. If you don't, that's the part where I believe in when people say, sell yourself. I'm like, yeah, because like have confidence in yourself in that regard. Mm-hmm. I know I have something that people need to have. Like, I know I have something. Believe in yourself enough, and I say sell yourself to yourself. Yeah. Where you convince yourself that I know I have something. But if you feel like, okay, obviously the character I am, and I mean this respectfully, I'm the person who's just not really like confident about speaking, or like I'm the person who doesn't really want to talk to people. I'm the person who's very kind of anti. That's not gonna work.
Well, it's selfish.
It's selfish.
If you just stay stuck in that, it's selfish.
Yeah, and I think it gets people to say like, well, like again, you could have the cure to somebody's needs, and somebody's like, I'm just waiting for someone to come to me and talk to me.
Yeah.
But nobody's gonna talk to the guy who doesn't want people to talk to them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
You're pushing it away, and it's like I say, it's selfish. If you're sitting there thinking like, man, I've got the solution,
Yeah.
but I'm afraid, or I'm embarrassed, or what are people going to think? All those things, you're doing everybody else a disservice.
Yeah.
You know, I remember this. I always think about this when my daughter's a nurse, and I remember talking to people about like, oh, I couldn't. You know, some people would say, oh, I could never be a nurse. I can't stand blood, or you know, it's like, okay, not everybody's cut out to be a nurse. I get that, but if everybody just said, well, I can't be a nurse because I can't stand blood, or I can't, it's like there would be no nurses.
Right.
So at some point you have to like get out of your way and do what you know is right.
Yeah.
And whether it's to provide a service, like I say, tell a story, whatever it is, we've got to get beyond our own, head.
It's like Indiana Jones, right? Why does it have to be snakes? Right? But yet he always finds himself encountering snakes. And if Indiana Jones realized that, of course, he's scared of snakes.
Right.
But I know everything I want is on the other side of those snakes.
Yep.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's you put up a persona, a different character to get past that next level.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about what we do. Like even like as a storyteller, right? I help actors all the time get to a place where I'm like, yes, you wouldn't do that.
Right.
But in the script, he has to.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
there's a difference. There's a difference. It's but I wouldn't, but you have to.
Right.
You have to, because okay, like even if you take the most selfish characters in movies, it's like, well, that's out of character for them. But yet when a character, I think you understand, when a character's like, if I don't do this, the love of my life dies.
Mm-hmm.
And it requires them to be selfless for the first time. You also understand how that makes the movie.
Yeah.
When a character realizes who he is not going to be able to be the one who saves who he loves.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And
it's the same way.
And it's talked about a lot, like, with bravery, like you hear, the whole thing about, bravery is not the lack of fear, it's doing something, in spite of the fear. Mm-hmm. And I think, a lot of times that's attributed to maybe some more heroic, death-defying acts, let's say, like, you hear a lot about in battle and things like that. But it really, that's kind of the basis of everything we're talking about, is it can be just little things. On a daily basis. Even something as small as, I always say, it's like people sometimes, I think, wait for that big thing to do, to change the world, or to change, something about their life or about the world. And I think there's so many things that we can do on an everyday basis that's on a smaller level, maybe, but it's so important. And it could be something as simple as smiling at a stranger,
Yeah.
Or being nice to somebody that's, serving you breakfast or whatever. There's all these little things that we can do, but we just, again, it's like, it's kind of getting out of our own head and really, connecting with somebody else in spite of, maybe ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that goes to the idea of like being a community as well. Because if you, like, sometimes you need to do your job and like do something as simple as, like you say, hello, talking to somebody, getting their story. You're building a bridge that I do believe will come back to help you. Mm-hmm. And again, it's like these people, like I do believe it always comes back. That's just my belief. Mm-hmm. And I think it's like, I don't know who I'm helping sometimes when I just say like, all right, like here's $1. And everybody's like, oh, but that man could be stealing your money. I said, regardless, he's begging. Yeah. And I said, like, regardless of what it is, if it's a performance, I bought a performance for $1. Right. And at the end of the day, who knows, like, what that person's story is or not. Yeah. I'm like, why does it hurt us to give someone $1? Right. Oh, I earned that $1. Great, but that $1 is going to be spent somewhere else anyway. Yeah. And I'm saying to a person or maybe a place or an establishment that has all these red flags, all these things that hasn't given to the community, whatever, but yet sometimes you see somebody in need. all you can do is sometimes give $1 just with faith.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I think very often we think, well, I don't. Maybe not everybody thinks this, but you think, okay, if I give him $1, he's just going to go buy some booze.
Yeah, of course.
But that's not really our place to assume that.
Yeah.
I think if we're truly reaching out, trying to help and connect somebody, like you say, it's going to come back, and it may not even be like directly with that individual. There might be somebody else. Maybe somebody saw that in another car, and they're like, you know what? Yeah, I need to do more or something, and they go on and do something great for somebody else. So it's. Yeah, you never really know, what your good deeds are going to do.
And again, that goes back. Like, sometimes your business is bigger than you. Because, again, we go back to, like, talking about how big of an impact Disney is for people.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's so many people who come to Disney. There's no way you're getting everybody's, you're recording everybody's experience.
Right.
And there's some people who needed that. Like, who said, like, our family's going through something. And we wanted to take a trip with our kids. Or all these stories you hear about Disney when they're like, oh, my wife and I almost got divorced, but we went to Disney with our kids, and it just reminded us of what family was like.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, even with my industry, with filmmaking, it's like, I told you this before, like, I save stories. Like, that's the reason I got into filmmaking, is saving stories. And I hear somebody's story, and I then say, okay, let me turn that into a movie. And then I put it out there. And then somebody who I was not even thinking about when I made this movie comes up to you and says, you were speaking to me.
Right.
That was exactly what I needed. That motivated me. That talked to me. I went through something similar. Not exactly what happened in the film, but I went through something similar. And you reminded me of what it was. Like, I wrote a poem one time, and I put it on Facebook. And it was just a poem of how angry I was at the time. And I said, I hope you hate me well was the poem. And I just wrote it because...
I hope you die. I hope you hate me.
Yeah, I know. There's a theme. And I said that because I wanted people to understand, it's like, if you hate me, don't let it be in vain. Let it be something that motivates you to be a better version of yourself. If I have to be your rival who you never talk to, let it be you compare yourself to me, but as long as it makes you better.
Right.
And I remember writing that, and this woman messaged me, an old friend of mine, who I haven't heard from since I was like maybe in middle school. And she messaged me saying, hey, I read this. I just went through a divorce with my husband, and it was the most heartbreaking thing that ever happened to me, and your poem just spoke to me. Now, of course, I wasn't thinking about divorce or when all this stuff was happening. Like, I've never been through a divorce. I never had that. But when I saw that response, I was like, wow, somebody took what I wrote and made it work for whatever situation they were in.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes the beauty of what you sell. It's like, I'm selling something, and sometimes it has a multi-purpose use.
Yeah,
sometimes it's like, I know I want it to change this mind, but it might change somebody else in this way.
Right.
So yeah.
And you never know how who's gonna, like you say, who's gonna affect, who's gonna change. Because kind of like what you're talking about is like the role of the villain, right, in a story. And we were talking before we came on air too about you had a friend that was acting and played the role of Adolf Hitler, which has got to be a tough thing, especially you said the gentleman is Jewish.
Yes.
But again, that's a great example of getting out of your own head, not to say like, oh, I can't play Adolf Hitler, he was evil. It's like, well, yeah, of course he was. And so it's your job, your role in this film, to have people hate you.
Yeah.
And I love like some of the character actors that like you just love to hate them.
Yes.
They play these roles and it's like, but there's a reason why you're supposed to hate them.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting to me because again, it goes back to, it's just like you're playing that role. That's what you have to do at that point. And so you have to die. I mean, it goes back to that saying.
And that's the beauty of what we do in this art. Right?
Yeah.
It's because, again, the show is bigger than the actor. So again, I don't want people to hate me. But at the same time, I want to give this character the most genuine performance.
Yeah.
To the point where when you watch this story, you need to hate me to love him.
Right.
And that's what we always talked about in acting. It's like, acting is not a selfish sport. It's about passing it to your partner, always.
Yeah.
Your partner, like the answer is always in your partner's eyes. It's always about making your partner look good. So again, if I'm playing Macbeth, and and you come at me, and and you're saying, "Oh, you killed my wife and family," I have to make sure that you despise me, so you love him,
right?
So that at the end of the day, you get the overall theme of the story. If I do my job, that's what would happen. if I don't do my job and I'm so focused on what Tony was, well, I still want people to like me.
Right,
so I'm going to say, let me take the edge off. Oh, I apologize. You know what I mean? It's not the same story.
Right.
And now it goes off of, okay, well, I wasn't playing Macbeth. I was playing Tony as Macbeth.
Right.
And people need to let those things go.
Yeah.
And that's why I say, let yourself die so these characters can live.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Film to me, film strikes me as like a perfect metaphor for life, you know? And again, it all comes down to the story. You know, on this show, we talk a lot about, we get to the story. What's the story about, you know, whether it's the guest or the story that they tell. And it always comes back to that. And it's like, I think it's like a perfect metaphor, because there is times where you have to have people hate you. And I think about like with coaching, like in coaching sports, you know, and even being a leader sometimes, you know, it's like, I ask the question sometimes as a leader of an organization or as a family, whatever, are you looking to be liked? And, you know, I mean, start with that question. A lot of people say, you know, should you be liked as a leader? And my thing is always like, well, you shouldn't strive to be liked, you should strive to be loved. And the difference is that sometimes if you're loved, sometimes you're hated, but at the same time, you know, because it's like you're maybe asking people to do something that they don't think they can do, or to be somebody that they don't think they can be. But you see something as a leader, so you're going to drive that person, and sometimes they're going to hate you. Again, in sports, it's like really clear. Like you have a coach that's just, you know, making you do drills. Yeah, I know you can do it better. I know you can do it better. And you're hating them. It's like, oh my God, I can't even move. It's like, you know, one more lap, you know, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, wow, they made me better. Yeah. So I love that person now.
And I think, speaking on that, like, yeah, there's times where even like in film directing, right? Actors hate you.
Right.
Because you're sitting there driving, I think we can do it again.
Yeah.
And they're like, I just did everything. I just gave everything I had right now. And they're yelling at you, and they have all these emotions. I remember I had this one actor, this is one of my favorite stories, and she's yelling at me. Like, I gave you everything. I gave you everything I had. This is all I have right now. And like, I'm tired of this. I'm tired. We've been
Perfect.
up to like
That's
3 a.m.
it.
And I'm like, okay, now take that energy and put it in, like, do it now.
Yeah.
And she does it.
Yeah.
And she's breaking down. And she's crying. And she's giving this heartfelt experience. And afterwards, she comes up to you and she says, thank you. And it's gratifying. It gives you goosebumps thinking about it. But it's gratifying and it's emotional, because you have to be willing as a leader, like you said, to not be liked. But again, at the end of the day, I still stand by this. All the people I care about more than whatever project we work on. So if we're making a movie, I take the team with me. You're gonna make flops, but we're making a movie. But I always tell people, no one's bigger than the project.
Right.
So I make that clear. It's like,
including yourself.
Including myself. Like, I would do whatever I have to do to get us to where this project needs to be. Right. And if that pushes you, I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to break you down, but I want you to understand in this moment, you know, if you just lost your son, and let's say you're out there and you're doing this movie and you lost your son. You just got out of a divorce. Your son is gone. You're at your breaking point. That's what the character needs. That's where we need him. But you don't want to go that route because it makes you uncomfortable.
Right.
Uncomfortability doesn't exist in this world right now. Everything, life is uncomfortable. You know, there's people that you trust the most, your own family members, who hurt you the most. And you come home and you don't feel comfortable in your own house sometimes because of what has actually happened in real life. That's real life. And I tell people, I say, sometimes acting is not the idea of adding on, it's the idea of taking away. Because you think it's all about, oh, I gotta add this to get there. I'm like, no, I'm stripping you down to just raw energy, raw emotion. Because again, we've all been through pain. We've all felt heartbreak. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening to this, I'm saying, you felt that. But right now you're trying to be a character who's just, I'm too tough. I'm impervious to pain, because you in your heart think that's who I am. Yeah. You know, I wouldn't handle that way, but the character isn't you. Right. The character isn't you.
Well, I think, you know, in that case, you know, if you're holding on to something, maybe you're trying to protect your ego, right? Because you don't want to, I mean, again, it goes back to vulnerability, like we talk about a lot. And, you know, again, acting, it can be very, very vulnerable. because you're letting that raw emotion kind of come through.
Yeah.
And you're allowing that to happen because it needs it right now. Like you say, that situation needs that. It needs for you to be vulnerable.
And that's also business, right? Because there's some times where I'm not the guy to come up with the best idea.
Right.
And I realize, again, we talked about this earlier, the catering guy says, hey, what if you did that? I know I'm just a guy here delivering food, but what if you did it this way? And you know what? Because you guys have been so attached to this project, you weren't even thinking that way.
Yeah.
But the catering guy gave you the best idea. And what are you going to do? You're going to say, well, I'm the director.
Right.
I'm the director, so the catering guy doesn't know more than I do.
Right.
But sometimes they do.
Yeah.
Like, and that's okay. And all I can say to him is, thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm so humbled that you paid attention to my movie for this long, that you actually had an idea.
Yeah.
And you actually really cared enough to voice that idea.
Yeah, and I think it's funny, thinking about like business and filmmaking too, there's a lot of metaphorical connections or whatever. I mean, as the director, you're leading that project, that film, and you're there to tell a story. Well, as a leader in an organization, whether it's your own company or you're in a department in a larger company, whatever, you're the director of that effort, whatever it is, whatever you're doing at that point of those projects. So you're the one that's leading that team. And I think, to your point, you need to be open to those ideas that come from elsewhere, and not just be so like egotistical, like, oh, I know everything.
Right.
And that's, like with coaching, that's what I look for in clients, is that ability to kind of say, okay, I need, I'm open to like a different perspective. Somebody coming in, and that's what I do a lot with coaching, is that I'm a totally different perspective. I mean, I work with a business owner that's been doing something for 20, 30 years, and they've been doing it this way, and they're really good at it, and they know everything about their business. And I could come in and just one little observation about something that they maybe never even thought of, and it's like, oh, that changes everything. That's awesome. And to me, that's really rewarding when you can do that, make people look at things in a different perspective.
I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome, because I think it's kind of like when you've acted a monologue the same way the whole time, and you're like, yeah, this is how you're supposed to say this monologue. To be or not to be, that is the question. And then somebody's like, but what if you actually ask the question? And you're hearing the question, and you realize this is a guy who's on the brink of committing suicide. And no matter how you look at it, to be or not to be, is that the question? You know what I mean? It's like he's asking the question now. He's like, to be or not to be, that is the question. There's a difference. Because if I say to be or not to be, that is the question, that's a statement. But when you actually ask the question, it's like, we've all thought about that in our life once or twice. I'm actually listening to the question. And my teacher used to say that to me, ask the question. And I never got it at first. I'm like, what do you mean? It's a line, it's a line, it's a line. I'm like, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
He's like, ask it, to be or not to be. He said, break it down, to be or not to be.
It's funny. I've heard that so many times.
Yeah.
In movies, I mean, just spoofs of it, everything. It's like, you hear that all the time, to be or not to be. And I've never, until just now, thought of it that way.
Yeah.
As far as like, it's, should I exist or not?
And that's a scary thought.
Yeah.
But again, those ideas come from sometimes somebody coming in and taking the house, like taking the brick, like taking one brick from the house you built and completely tearing it down.
Right.
And now you have the ability to rebuild from scratch.
Yeah.
And now I'm rebuilding with all these pieces that we've learned. And I'm saying, oh, I thought this was just a one-story house. When in actuality, I just made a mansion.
Yeah.
Because this brick, the way I was building, was just so in my own way. But now I'm building even bigger, because I'm taking all the pieces from teammates, all these people who hear me when I'm talking to them, and they say, this is what I need, this is what I want, this is how, and that's what being a leader is, I think.
Hey everybody, it's Coach Pete. I hope you're enjoying the show today. A lot of people will know that I am a business and productivity coach, and I'd like to do something special for our viewers and listeners of the show, and that is to offer a free 45-minute coaching session with me personally. So if that's something you'd like to take advantage of, go ahead and click on the link below. You can also go to my website. It's sackelpg.com, and go ahead and book your free 45-minute coaching session. I would love to hear your story. I'm looking forward to talking to you and getting to know you. So go ahead and click on the link, and now let's get back to the show. Yeah.
It's like taking bricks from everybody to build this mansion for everyone to live in.
Well, and I think that's the key to innovation as
yeah.
well. I mean, you have to look at something in a different way to innovate. I mean, you can't just keep doing something the same way. I mean, it could possibly evolve, but it's going to take a really long time. So if you look at innovation, I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is looking at things, questioning everything. You know, it doesn't have to be done this way. You know, and it's like, again, especially in larger organizations, you get into that, you know, that stale mode of, oh, we've always just done it this way.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, that's one of the benefits of having a smaller business, is that you can innovate quicker.
Yeah.
And I think, again, you need to be open, you know, to those suggestions, because that's where innovation comes in. And again, just the way you deliver that line, to be or not to be, and just to think about it in a different way, it's like, wow, yeah, that really does go off in a whole different, you know, trajectory.
I think that's what you and I talk about here all the time, though, right? Because we talk about all the time, like, we listen and we just have conversations about what's best for Pete and what's best for, like, the show. And we, again, like, working on the show with you, like, I love working on the show, because I think there's so much more where, like, even with you, we talk about vulnerability and the ability to, like, every guest you have has taught you to grow in some way. You know what I mean? And I think that is so brilliant, you know? And if people will get behind the idea that, hey, people, you can learn from other people. You never grow up. My parents are older, and I always tell them all the time, I'm like, you can still learn. Until you die, you can still learn. And I want you to understand, it's like, that's the best thing about life. That is the best thing we get to be. Like, we get to be students for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love that. I honestly love learning from people age 10.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm listening to kids who do film and who do acting, and I'm listening to them talk. And I'm like, you honestly unlocked something in me that I never thought could be unlocked, because you're talking to me.
Yeah.
And you don't even know what you're doing, but you're just
Exactly.
like being genuinely you.
Yep.
And, you know, and I tell this to actors. I said, you want to know how to act? Watch kids on a playground. You couldn't tell them they weren't Superman.
Right.
You couldn't tell them they weren't Wonder Woman. But now, when we get older, we have all these judges in our heads and all these people coming in our head to tell us who we are.
Right.
And now I'm telling you to let you die so that this new thing can come in. Be that kid on the playground who you had to pull away from the monkey bars to say, we have to go home now, recess is over. And they're like, no, I'm Spider-Man. I'm Spider-Man. What happened to us? What happened to that? So, anyway.
Yeah,
that's what I love.
We've talked about that. I think I talked about it to one of the guests too, as far as, you know, are we born entrepreneurs or do we become entrepreneurs? And just to your point, like when you're a kid, you're not like 5 years old saying, oh man, I can't wait to grow up and work in some office underneath fluorescent lights and be told what to do every minute of the day. It's like you're thinking about, like, you know, changing the world, right? A superhero or being an astronaut. It's like, yeah, okay, being an astronaut, maybe you're working for NASA, but it's like you don't think about it in those terms. You think about going and exploring and finding new planets or whatever. So it's like you say, that that magic of being young and being, like, not knowing that you're supposed to be a certain way, just being yourself. I think if we can kind of capture that in some way on a day-to-day basis, or at least on a fairly regular basis, again, that's where innovation comes from. And like you say, to your point, you could be watching, you know, an 8-year-old on the playground and doing something, and all of a sudden something hits you. It's like, oh, wait a minute, that's the answer to the problem I've been trying to solve. You know, you just got to be open to those things. And see, I get really discouraged, like, when I see people, like, shut down, like, have this closed mind.
Yeah. Like,
everything they know, they've learned already. That's it, you know. And there's young people that feel this way too, I think, sometimes. And it's like, that's boring.
Yeah, and I say that to myself all the time. Like, you know, first of all, respectfully, I think the problem we have with a lot of people in our generation, no offense, is that we want to act like we have the answers to everything. When I think the best part about living is finding the answers to everything. And I mean that, like, ask questions, be a well of knowledge, and keep growing in that way. I mean, there are so many things I do not know. I mean, I've been introduced to new things just recently, you know, and I'm sitting there listening to people talk about their religion, talk about their faith, and I'm just sitting there like a kid, like back in, like, elementary school. Like, I've never heard that. Like, please tell me more. And I think it's like, I think we want to go to like social media to just get our answers and just be like, okay, that's how that we think from that person. That person is how we think. You know, we should just listen to them and that's it. Versus, well, if somebody brought up something different, let me go do my own research. Let me read this about this. Let me go and like dive deeper into that,
Right.
and then be like, wow, okay, this person either inspired me to grow in the same direction, or I'm going the complete opposite direction because I realized the person was not speaking the same truth.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I mean, just allow yourself to just be open. And I mean, like, again, this is film. Like, I mean, this is like not just film, but like this is the world we live in. But like in the industry, like your best stories sometimes come from the people you don't think you should learn from.
Yeah.
And or like the people opposite thinking. You know?
Well, and I think there's a hesitancy sometimes because we feel like, wow, if I learn about this, you know, I don't want to learn about that because it's not what I believe. It's like, that's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to like take those, you know, beliefs on and make that part of your own belief system, but just the understanding of like what that is, what's that about? It's just, it opens up your mind. And it's kind of a dark example, but it's like, I think it's interesting to watch stories about like serial killers.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't want to become a serial killer.
Right.
I don't respect them like for what they did, but it's interesting to see like, you know, what
process.
Yeah, what this person went through to become this, you know, how do they, you know, start thinking that way and all that stuff. I just think it's like so, I mean, part of the reason why I have, you know, a podcast, not because anything to do with serial killers, but it's like I have this curiosity,
Yeah.
right? I want to understand. It's also why I went the route of coach rather than consultant. And I heard this, and I do consultancy as well, but it's like, I've heard this example before where consultants, to your point, consultants have all the answers, coaches have all the questions. And I always felt that was a better role for me, is to be able to go and talk to someone and start asking questions like, you know, what's the purpose of, you know, doing it that way? Or did you ever think about doing it, you know, all those things that I think, again, is all part of the innovation.
You know, that's so funny. I had a similar expression I used to use back when I was in college. I tell people, I go to church for answers. I go to theater for questions. And I used to say that because I love that, because there's something for me where I was like, as artists, my goal is to keep you talking at home, to ask questions with the family. Eugene Ionesco, one of my favorite playwrights, he used to say, you know, you're a good director when people leave the show and they're saying, oh, that was great, that was good. He said, but you know you're a great director when people go home and they say, hey, I want to have a conversation and I want to talk about what I can do to better my life. What can I do that's different? And you bring that conversation home where they're talking about your show at dinner because it led to a conversation about something bigger.
Right.
And that's what we're supposed to do, in my opinion, as artists, as coach. Again, you're inspiring those people as artists. I mean, I'm trying to get people to see something bigger.
Right.
Not just the show. The show is just a rocket ship to take you there.
That's the vehicle.
You know, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, but I want you guys to go and think about the world when you watch this.
Yeah.
And you think about everything. And again, like if you think your film is just so supposed to be something people just take in and just be like, oh, that was fun. It's supposed to be something, in my opinion, much bigger.
Yeah.
Something for them to want to live their life by. You know, again, the reason why Disney works so well is because they literally make movies that you feel like, okay, I want to be a part of that world.
Right.
I want to join that. And they say, come to our theme park. And it's like, we literally built the world for you to come.
Walk out in the merchandise shop after the ride.
Exactly. and you feel like it's something so much bigger than you. But you just want to be a part of it, you know? So I love that. I think that's, yes, innovation. Like I love the idea of like coaches being someone who asks questions. And just like directors, we don't really like solve the problem. A lot of times directors don't even want to direct. They want to have actors who already are ready to like sit there and be like, okay, I have an answer for this. And directors are like, so here's my question. Do you think that character like is really going to walk in this room and do this? Like, and again, I know the text says this, but what do you think the character wants to do right now?
Right.
And he's like, well, I think it says he's going to walk in. I said, but why do you think he's doing this right now?
Yeah.
And then they solve the questions. They want to answer the questions. That's what actors love to do.
That's something. It's funny. It's something that's always interested me. When you watch like whether it's a movie or a TV show that maybe it's been on for a few seasons, and big Seinfeld fan, and there's such a big difference in like the pilot of the Seinfeld show and then what it became. And I always thought about that later on, like as they're writing the show, you know, there's writers, but then there's these performers, like you say, that have developed these characters. And who knows better than these characters that are actually become those people. So it's like, I always wonder like what the trade-off or what the contribution is, I guess, from the actors.
Yeah, I think about that with like shows like Game of Thrones. Right? I was saying that to my friends actually not too long ago, funny enough, and I was like, some director has the poor job of coming in like season 10 and having to be like, or season 8 technically, season 8, and being like, okay, I'm going to tell Jon Snow. Yeah. Who Jon Snow needs to be at this moment. And this guy's like, well, I've been playing this character for 8 years. You know, like, why would I do that? Why would I? But again, your job is to have that conversation. And director's job is just to lead them to the promise. Yeah. You know what I mean? But it's like, you have to be your attorney for what you believe. Because if you're saying that also, like, I want you to feel this way. I want you to have that conversation with me and say, I don't think my character would do that. I'm like, okay, but why? And tell me why. Well, because he did this, this, and this. I said, okay, but understand, at the end of this, you're going to kill someone, you know? I need you to get there. That's my goal. My goal right now in this moment is to convince you that, hey, I'm going to kill someone from the place I'm at now, and I need you to figure out the in-between part. Right. You know what I mean? Right. And again, I do this with kids all the time. I take a script, right? And if you look at a script and I say, what do you guys see? And everybody says words, right? Great answer, fantastic. And I say, you know what I see? I see like 35% text, 70% like, or 65% white space. Yeah, between the lines. And you have to fill in that white space. Mm-hmm. That's what I love about directing. It's like, I love being like, you know, when people combat me, like, well, I don't want to kill myself at the end. Of course, I don't think Hamlet would kill himself at the end of the show. Like, I mean, let somebody kill him. Or I don't think Romeo or Juliet would kill themselves at the end of this. Okay, but why? Yeah. Fill in the white space. Right. Fill in the white space. And then you realize, okay, well, I see why they do it now, because you filled it in. You realize what it took to get to that moment. What it takes for Juliet and Romeo to realize, if not each other, then who? Yeah. You know what I mean? So. Yeah, and I think that's such a great metaphor, analogy. I'm not sure exactly what the grammar is on this, but for you know, between directing and leading, right? Because again, directing, you're leading the cast of characters, and when you're a leader, it's the same thing. So you want to get, you know, all the experience and everything that your team members have. They come to the table with something, with that background and everything. And I think as a leader, it's our jobs to get them to perform, you know, at their best. Yeah. To get, you know, where's the motivation, right? What's this role for me? And I think that's, you know, again, that big picture vision that team members need, because they need to know, where is this going? You know, where is this film going? Where is our company going? And if you as a director, as a leader, can set that vision and then let these people come in and take their experiences and parts of themselves and play these roles to get to that vision, I think that's what makes a great director and a great leader. Yeah, and Andrew Stanton said this to me. One of my friends at Boston University, his dad was Andrew Stanton, who is, if you guys don't know, the writer of Toy Story and Finding Nemo and all the great films. He said to me, and he said to all of us, he was like, to be a director is to be the top of an upside down pyramid. Mm-hmm. He said, everybody's needs comes through you. Yep. And you have to be strong enough to take on everybody's needs and then produce something like through you. Yeah. You're a funnel at the end. And I love that, because I think even with the coach, even with everything you do, you need to make sure all your clients, everybody, even as a leader of a business, you want to make sure you're taking care of everyone. Yep. At the same time, the vision stays, like, it's still going one direction. Yep. The vision still has to stay true. You have to be honest. And then you have to be like, whoever I need to be to let this be. Like, I could have the worst day this morning. Could have came in horrible. Like, had the worst morning. Cut off in traffic. The coffee machine was broken. Like, maybe like the dog didn't want to go out, and like, and he pooped in the house. I had to clean it up. Yada yada. But yet, when you go to that office, you have to be someone willing for everybody to come to and say, "Hey, I have a concern. I have a problem. Can I get your help?"
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with a director. It's like the story. Like, at the end of the day, for business, it's to keep the company, like the company's mission. For filmmakers, it's to tell the story. And it's like, I refuse to be the reason why the story is not told today.
Right.
I refuse to be the reason why the business doesn't work today.
Mm-hmm.
So as a leader, you have to be willing to be selfless and allow yourself to die so that this new character, Boss Pete, Director Anthony Golden, or Coach Pete, or Director Anthony Golden, can sit there and be like, "Hey, what do you need?"
Right.
That's what you have to do.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to do. But again, we signed up for this.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Well, I think you just brought it back full circle.
Yeah.
You got the I hope you die back in there again too at the end, and I think that kind of sums it up. I think that's great. I mean, great conversation, and I'm not surprised. Again, we have, Tony and I talk like this in between other episodes, and
which I'm surprised how we get things done, because sometimes I'm like, man, we spent like an hour just talking, but it's always great talking to you, Pete. Like I said,
you too. I mean, it's great, and I knew that you would be a great guest, and I wasn't disappointed. I think everybody else will enjoy this as well. But so thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Tony Golden,
Yep.
Producer here at C47 Digital Studios.
Hello.
Josh Pye is actually the owner of C47 Digital Studios, so thanks to him as well. And catch out Josh's podcast, Bootstrapped Unicorns, which Tony is also the producer and technician on.
Yep. Also, Miller Owens is another.
Oh, Miller Owens. Yes, Miller is the other producer here. And thank you, of course, to our viewers, our listeners, and I hope you enjoyed our guest today, Tony Golden. I hope you enjoyed meeting success. So until next time, this is Coach Pete saying bye for now.